The silence of space is deafening. To those who roam the stars, it is a realm where laws of nature are stretched and broken. But even in the vast emptiness, something was stirring. A call had gone out, a cry so filled with anguish and desperation that it rattled the very core of human resolve. The cry for help echoed across the galaxy, reaching far beyond the edge of human civilization. And Earth, long thought to be a forgotten backwater in the cosmos, would respond. It all began when the inhabitants of the Kolrak star system, a highly advanced race of beings, made an unexpected move. Their intentions were clear: conquer and control. Their first target? Earth. Armed with superior technology and unimaginable firepower, they landed in orbit around our planet, their fleet blotting out the sky. They underestimated us. In their eyes, humans were no more than an afterthought, a primitive species weak and incapable of defending themselves against such overwhelming power. But they didn't count on one thing: the cry. The one desperate plea that rang out from a corner of the world no one expected. It was a simple, heart-wrenching call for help from a small, overlooked village. No military force, no government official. Just the voice of a single individual, a human, reaching into the void, asking for salvation. It was a cry fueled by the sheer will to survive. At first, no one believed it would matter. But the message found its way into the hands of someone who understood the weight of it. A former soldier, now a civilian, still haunted by the memories of a war he thought he had left behind. When the message reached his ears, it awakened something within him. He knew the stakes were higher than anyone could imagine. The world's leaders had their doubts. Would a call from a distant village change the course of history? Could it possibly be enough to rally humanity's military forces against an alien threat? But this was no ordinary message. It was a call to arms, a summons to the heart of human resilience. And when that message reached the right ears, Earth's response was swift, powerful, and unwavering. Across continents, the world's mightiest militaries mobilized. Old alliances were rekindled, and the planet's defenses were readied for a battle unlike any before. But the Kolraks were not the only ones listening. The cry that had summoned Earth's might had caught the attention of others, unknown forces watching from the shadows, waiting for their moment to strike. What did they want? And why did they allow such a cry to go unheard for so long? As Earth's armies prepared to clash with the Kolraks, another force, far more dangerous, was already in motion, one that could change everything. What lay in wait for humanity's defenders was a mystery, and the clock was ticking. The world was on the edge, and no one knew if they would survive the storm that was about to hit. Would Earth's forces rise to the occasion? Or was this a battle that could never be won? The fate of humanity hung in the balance. The cry had been heard. But at what cost? The world had never felt so fragile. As Earth's militaries converged, there was a sense of unease that no one could shake. The Kolraks were still up there, silent but waiting, their enormous warships looming like shadows over every corner of the Earth. For all their advanced technology, no one had yet seen a single Kolrak soldier. No one had heard them speak. The world's leaders were left in the dark, trying to prepare for an invasion they couldn't fully comprehend. In a dimly lit command center, General Harding stared at the holographic map before him. The map flickered, showing red and green zones, strategic locations where Earth's forces had been positioned in anticipation of a Kolrak strike. His mind raced. Every part of him had been trained for war, but this was different. The Kolraks weren't just another enemy. They were something else, something unknown. And every calculation, every move they made, could be their last. There was no plan for this. It was then that a quiet voice interrupted his thoughts. "Sir, the transmission's coming through." Harding didn't respond, but his hand moved instinctively toward the console, bringing the live feed to life. On the screen was a woman, her face drawn with exhaustion, but her eyes burning with the kind of fire that Harding had only seen in soldiers on the front lines. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady but urgent. The cry. It wasn't just a call for help. It's a warning. Her name was Layla, a former intelligence officer who'd spent years tracking alien movements across the galaxy. She'd gone silent years ago, disappearing into the shadows of Earth's intelligence community. Harding had thought her dead. But now she was here, and her words hung in the air like a death sentence. "The Colrax," she continued, "they've been watching us for centuries. They didn't come to conquer, at least, not yet. What they're really after is us." She paused, the weight of her words sinking in. "They're afraid of us. Of what we might become." Harding's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of information. Fear was a weapon, one he knew all too well. But fear of humanity? That was a concept he couldn't understand. "Why would they be afraid of us?" Harding asked, his voice low. Leela looked away, as if searching for something in the depths of her own memories. "Because we are more than they ever expected. We've evolved. And the cry you heard, it was a signal, one they never thought we would be capable of sending. But now that they know we can, they'll do anything to stop us from unleashing our full potential." The words hung in the air, heavy with implications. Harding turned to his officers, but no one spoke. They all knew what this meant if Leela was right. Earth wasn't just facing an invasion. They were facing something far worse, an enemy terrified of humanity's future. As the hours ticked by, the tension in the command center grew. Each military unit was ready to move, their weapons primed and their minds focused. But there was no telling where the first strike would come from. The Colrax ships remained still in orbit, almost as if they were waiting for something, waiting for Earth to make a move. Then, in the dead of night, an alarm screamed through the base. The sky outside was suddenly filled with light. The Colrax ships were descending, but not as expected. They weren't heading for major cities or military installations. No, they were targeting something else. Something smaller. Something more personal. Harding's heart raced as he realized what was happening. The cry had been heard, and the Colrax had responded in the only way they knew how, with fear and with violence. And in the chaos of that moment, Layla's voice echoed in Harding's ear. "It's not over. It's only just begun." The ground shook beneath Harding's feet as the warning alarms blared throughout the military base. The Colrax ships, massive and unyielding, descended like dark clouds over the horizon. Earth's defense systems hummed to life, and the planet's forces, still untested, braced themselves for impact. But no one had prepared for this kind of invasion. The Colrax weren't landing with conventional weapons or launching an all-out assault. Instead, their ships seemed to be scanning, hovering above the most unexpected of places, small towns, quiet farmlands, and isolated villages. Harding's mind raced. Why these places? Why not major cities or military bases? The Colrax had the technology to obliterate anything in their path. So why weren't they acting on it? The answer came sooner than he expected. The broadcast came through, distorted and full of static. "This is a direct communication to Earth's military," a calm voice echoed across the screen. It was a Colrax commander, his features angular and cold. "We know what you are capable of. We know you heard the cry. We are not here to destroy you, yet. We are here to see if you are truly worthy of your place in the galaxy. If you answer us in the way we expect, we will leave your planet in peace. If not," the transmission cut off, leaving only silence and a growing sense of dread in its wake. Harding looked to his officers, his mind spinning. The Colrax wanted a test. A challenge. They weren't after conquest, not yet. But what did this test mean for Earth? For humanity? The stakes were higher than ever, and the weight of their next move pressed down on it. Meanwhile, in one of the small towns targeted by the Colrax ships, a different kind of tension was unfolding. In the heart of a remote village, a young woman named Lena had been among the first to hear the cry. It had come in the form of a dream, vivid and real, a voice calling to her from the darkness of space. It was only after hearing the broadcast from the Colrax commander that she understood what it meant. She had not just been chosen to hear the cry, she had been marked. Lena's family, simple farmers who had lived their whole lives in peace, were now caught in the crosshairs of something far beyond their comprehension. As the Kolrak's ship hovered above their land, Lena felt something stirring inside her, an unknown power, a strange connection to the very stars themselves. It wasn't fear that gripped her heart, but something else. Curiosity. And fear of what that curiosity might lead her to. Across the globe, other whispers began to spread, small pockets of people who had also heard the cry, people who had felt its pull in their very bones. Was this a coincidence? Or was something deeper at work? The Kolraks had not expected humanity to be capable of such a response. They had underestimated the strength of the human spirit, the ability to rise in the face of the unknown. The world's military might was being mobilized, but it was clear that this was not a war of weapons and strategies alone. Earth was being forced into something much more complex, something that would challenge everything humanity thought it knew about itself. But as the Kolrak ships drew closer, humanity's resolve was about to be tested in ways they couldn't predict. Each leader, each soldier, each civilian was about to be faced with a choice: stand with the rest of humanity, or face whatever the Kolraks were truly capable of. In Lena's quiet town, the ground trembled again. The Kolraks had made their move, and now, as darkness swallowed the land, the first wave of their soldiers began to emerge from the ships. But they weren't what anyone had expected. They were not the towering, armored invaders that Earth had feared. Instead, they were something else. Thin, translucent figures that glowed faintly, their eyes a cold, calculating blue. They moved with precision, as though drawn to something, someone. Lena felt a sharp pull deep inside her chest. The Kolrak soldiers were moving toward her family's farm. But why? The question lingered in her mind, unanswered, as the first figure reached the edge of her property. The tension between the unknown forces was at its peak, and as Lena stepped forward, drawn by some invisible force, she realized something was about to unfold that would change everything humanity had ever known. And there was no turning back. Lena's breath came in quick, shallow gasps as she stood frozen in place. The figure before her, a Kolrak soldier, moved slowly, almost deliberately, toward her. Its translucent body shimmered in the dim light, casting an eerie glow across the quiet fields. The ground beneath her feet felt unnervingly cold, as if the very earth itself were recoiling in fear. She could hear her heart pounding in her ears, each beat more deafening than the last. And yet, despite the terror clawing at her chest, she couldn't look away. The soldier's eyes locked with hers. Blue, cold, calculating. It raised a hand, its fingers elongated and unnaturally thin, and in that moment, Lena knew this was no ordinary invasion. This wasn't just about conquering Earth. It was something far darker, more personal. What do you want? Lena's voice cracked as she found herself speaking, the question escaping before she even realized she had the words. The Kolrak soldier didn't answer. It simply raised its other hand, and from within the folds of its shimmering body, a soft hum began to emanate. A low frequency that vibrated through Lena's bones. The world around her seemed to tilt, her surroundings blurring as if the very fabric of reality were warping under the force of this alien presence. A sound broke through the thick air, a voice calling from far away, faint but unmistakable. Lena! She turned in shock, her eyes wide. She hadn't imagined it. The voice was real. It was calling her. But from where? Meanwhile, across the globe, humanity was facing its own peril. Earth's militaries were scrambling, their forces stretched thin, trying to anticipate the next move of the Kolraks. The ships hovered overhead, a menacing reminder of the power they wielded. But despite all the technology and might at humanity's disposal, one thing had become painfully clear: Earth wasn't ready for this. Not like this. The world's strongest military leaders, including General Harding, found themselves at a loss for how to approach this threat. What do we know about them? Harding barked into his calm, frustration evident in his voice. His team had been analyzing the Kolraks' movements for hours, but the situation was growing more desperate by the minute. They didn't know their enemy, and that was their greatest weakness. "We've intercepted transmissions," one of his officers reported, "but they're encrypted. We can't get a clear read on their intentions. Whatever they want, it's not something they're willing to share openly." Harding cursed under his breath. Of course not. They never do. The implications of that hit him like a physical blow. The Kolraks weren't just invading Earth. They were playing a game, and humanity was the pawn. Back in the small town, Lena took a hesitant step forward, compelled by something she couldn't explain. The soldier before her was still watching, its eyes never wavering. Then, a soft, crackling sound broke the stillness. Another figure emerged from the shadow of the first, this one much larger, more imposing. It moved with purpose, its glowing form barely flickering as it approached Lena. The soldier's voice was like the hum of an ancient machine, deep and distant. "You have been chosen." The words sent a chill down her spine, the meaning of them sinking in slowly. Chosen for what? Chosen by whom? Before she could ask, the figure extended a hand toward her, and Lena felt something strange in the air, a pressure, a pull, as if the very space around them was shifting. Then, it happened. Lena's body felt weightless, as if the earth beneath her had vanished. She gasped, her hands reaching out instinctively to steady herself, but there was nothing to hold on to. The ground had literally vanished beneath her feet. She was falling, no, floating through space, or so it felt. All at once, the world shifted again, and she found herself standing in a vast, open space, a place not of Earth. It was a chamber, enormous in size, with towering structures that seemed to pulse with light. The walls weren't walls at all. They were alive, shifting and breathing like some colossal organism. And in the center of the room, a massive, glowing sphere floated. It thrummed with energy, drawing Lena's gaze as if it held the key to everything. She wasn't alone. The larger Kolrak's figure stood beside her, still glowing, still watching. And now, for the first time, it spoke again, its voice strangely. "You were always meant to find this. You were always meant to lead." Lena's mind spun, confusion and dread mingling in her chest. Lead what? Lead who? The hum of the sphere grew louder, more insistent. As it pulsed, Lena felt a sudden clarity, a surge of knowledge flooding her mind, too much to grasp all at once. And then, as quickly as it had come, the sphere went dark and everything stopped. A figure appeared in the distance, human but not. It was like a shadow, but with a presence that radiated power, something ancient and untold. "Lena," the figure called, its voice both foreign and familiar. "The test has only just begun." Her heart raced as the figure took a step closer. What did this mean for Earth? What did it mean for her? And as the figure's eyes met hers, she realized something even more terrifying. She wasn't just a witness to humanity's fate. She was the key. Lena's pulse quickened as the shadowy figure drew closer, its form growing clearer with each step. The air around her felt dense, almost suffocating, as if the very atmosphere had been charged with something far beyond anything she'd ever experienced. She was no longer sure what was real or what was a manifestation of the strange force she felt pulling at her. But one thing was certain: the stakes had just been raised to an unimaginable level. The figure stopped just a few feet away, its outline now unmistakably human, yet somehow still off. It wasn't the Kolrak soldier, nor was it any known human. It was something else entirely. The figure's eyes, bright, almost glowing, held a deep intensity, an ancient weight like it had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. "You still don't understand, do you?" the figure asked, its voice sending a shiver down Lena's spine. "This is far beyond your world's military might, far beyond the Kolraks." Lena opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The figure seemed to sense her confusion, and it smiled, though the gesture held no warmth. "You've been chosen because you are the one who can bridge the gap. The Kolraks were never meant to be the true challenge, Lena. They are only a part of something much larger, something much darker." She felt a knot tighten in her stomach. This wasn't just about Earth anymore. She wasn't just in a battle for survival. There was something far more ancient at play, and the Kolraks, for all their power, were mere pawns in a much greater game. But what could be more dangerous than the Kolraks? Before she could ask, a sudden tremor shook the chamber. The walls alive, pulsating like the beating heart of some colossal creature, began to vibrate violently, their rhythmic hum now growing chaotic. The sphere in the center of the room flickered again, its glow fading in and out. And then, with a blinding flash, a new voice erupted, cutting through the noise and the confusion. "You think you're in control of this, Lena?" The voice was cold, sharp, alien. "You are not. The Kolrax have no idea what they're about to awaken." The figure beside her stiffened, a look of fear crossing its face, a look Lena had never expected to see on such a being. It turned to face the source of the voice, its eyes narrowing. "No. Not yet. Not now." The voice didn't care. "You were always going to be the key, Lena. The question is, what will you do with the power that lies within you?" Lena's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't just a witness to an alien invasion. She wasn't just a pawn in the Kolrax test. She was somehow connected to this force, to this greater threat. But she still didn't understand how or why. What was this power they kept referring to? Was it inside her all along? Had the Kolrax known about it? Or was it something that had only recently awakened? The ground beneath her feet began to tremble once more, and the walls of the chamber shook violently. Then, as if on cue, the Kolrax soldiers who had been watching from the perimeter stepped forward, their glowing eyes now fixed on her with renewed intensity. But the tension in the air shifted. The soldiers didn't move with the same purpose they had before. Now they seemed uncertain, fearful even. Then, without warning, the dark figure stepped forward, its hand raised, and the entire room went silent. For a moment, Lena couldn't even hear her own breath. It was as if time itself had frozen. "What is this?" Lena whispered, her voice barely audible, but somehow it resonated in the stillness of the chamber. The figure didn't answer immediately. Instead, it turned back toward the glowing sphere, its face grim. "You need to understand, Lena. You are more than a key. You are the doorway. And the Kolrax are not prepared for what is about to come through it." The words hung in the air like an impending storm. Lena felt the weight of their meaning pressing down on her chest. The Kolrax were here, yes, but there was something far worse beyond them, something even they were afraid of. And as the chamber began to distort, the walls warping and twisting as if under the pressure of something immense, Lena realized with a cold certainty that nothing she had known up until this point would ever be the same. The choices she would soon have to make weren't just about survival. They were about the very future of Earth and every life within it. But before she could process the enormity of what she had just learned, a new sound broke through the stillness. A low, rumbling growl, deep and resonant, echoed through the chamber. And then, as the walls seemed to melt away, something dark and massive began to emerge from the shifting shadows. It was bigger than anything she had ever seen, and it was heading straight for her. The Kolrax soldiers tensed, their glowing forms now flickering with something resembling panic. The figure beside Lena turned to her, its face a mix of urgency and dread. "You need to make a choice, now, or we all die." And just like that, the ground beneath her feet began to collapse. The ground beneath Lena cracked open, sending a jolt of terror through her body. The chamber around her began to warp and twist, a sickening, otherworldly groan filling the air as the walls seemed to ripple like water. The creature, massive and shadowy, loomed just beyond the shifting darkness. Every instinct in her screamed to run, but where could she go? The figure beside her, the one who had warned her, seemed to know what was coming. Its face was a mask of desperation, but it wasn't just fear, it was something else. Understanding. The Kolrax soldiers, once unflinching in their military discipline, were now in full retreat, their bodies flickering in and out of their surroundings. They were afraid. But of what? Lena's heart pounded in her chest. "What is that?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, her throat dry with dread. "That," the figure said, its voice low, "is the force they've been trying to avoid for millennia. It's what they were never supposed to face." Lena's mind reeled. The Kolrax, the ones who had been so confident in their conquest of Earth, were running from something even they could not control. And now, she was caught in the middle of it. The walls continued to bend and pulse, the entire structure shifting as if it were alive. The shadowy creature was moving closer, its presence growing heavier with each passing second. It felt like the very air was thickening, pressing down on her as if the weight of the universe itself were bearing down. "You're the only one who can stop it," the figure said urgently. "You've always been. You just have to make the choice. You have to decide whether to seal the door or open it wide." Lena's mind swirled with confusion. "What door? What do you mean?" "The door between worlds," the figure explained, its voice almost frantic. "The Kolraks didn't come here by accident. They were sent to find it, to awaken it. They were trying to open the door to the greater void. But they couldn't. Only you can." Lena's body trembled as she realized the weight of the words. The sphere, the energy she had felt earlier, it wasn't just a power source. It was the key. She was the key. And somehow, she had been drawn here, not just to witness the invasion, but to decide its outcome. The massive creature, whatever it was, moved closer, its form almost translucent, its power radiating off it in waves. Lena could feel it, pressing against her chest, its force threatening to crush her under its intensity. The figure next to her reached out, placing a trembling hand on her shoulder. "You don't have much time. The door is opening. If you don't act, everything will be lost." Lena felt a surge of something deep within her, a strange force rising in her chest. The choice was hers. She could shut the door, sealing off whatever nightmare lay beyond. Or she could open it fully, unleashing a power so vast it could erase everything. Earth, the Kolraks, the entire galaxy, the very fabric of existence itself. Terror and doubt clawed at her mind. But as she stared at the creature moving toward her, something else stirred within her, a deep, unexplainable certainty. The Kolraks had known about this force, had feared it, yet had sought it out anyway. But what did it all mean? What was beyond the door? Suddenly, the creature surged forward, its dark, tendrilled limbs reaching for her, and Lena instinctively stepped back, her mind screaming for her to make a decision. Her eyes flicked to the glowing sphere in the center of the chamber. The door. She had to close it. She had to end this, no matter the cost. But before she could reach it, the figure beside her shouted, "Lena, don't!" It was too late. The chamber erupted in blinding light as Lena's hand touched the sphere. A shockwave of energy blasted through the room, sending the Kolrak soldiers tumbling backward. The creature, too, recoiled, screeching in what sounded like agony. The walls seemed to buckle, the air itself warping in impossible ways. Lena's vision blurred, her body feeling as if it were being torn apart by the sheer force of the energy. The world spun, the ground vanishing beneath her once more. She screamed, but her voice was drowned by the deafening roar of the force she had unleashed. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. The chamber was silent. Lena was standing once more on solid ground, but the world around her had changed. The walls were still, the eerie hum gone. The Kolrak soldiers were gone. The creature, too, was nowhere to be seen. The sphere, now dark, floated in the air, its power seemingly extinguished. But the stillness didn't last. A new sound echoed in the distance, a low, guttural growl. And as Lena turned, she saw the sky itself begin to crack open above her, dark clouds swirling ominously. A new force, something darker, something ancient, was descending. The door hadn't been sealed. It had been opened. The sky above Lena darkened, the once calm atmosphere now charged with an unnatural tension. The ground beneath her trembled as if the very earth was waking up, groaning under the weight of something ancient, something massive. She stood frozen, unable to look away from the swirling black clouds that twisted in the sky like a living thing. The creature from before, the one that had seemed to retreat, was now nothing more than a shadow on the horizon. It had been part of something much larger, and now it was clear the true danger was just beginning. Lena's heart raced as she looked around. The sphere that had once glowed with immense power now seemed almost insignificant in comparison to the looming darkness above. She realized, with a sinking feeling, that the door she had opened was not just a physical space, but a gateway one that had unleashed an unimaginable force onto the world. The Kolraks had come here for this, yes, but they had underestimated it. And now, Earth was at the mercy of whatever had slipped through. But then, a new sound broke through the oppressive silence. The same low growl that had echoed moments earlier, now more distinct, more powerful. It was coming from all directions. The Kolraks had been running from this force, but so had the other beings, the ones that had warned her. There was no escaping what had been unleashed. The figure, the one who had guided her, appeared once more, its face worn with regret. "You did what you had to," it said softly, its voice filled with sorrow. "But you don't understand the full extent of what's coming." Lena could barely comprehend what was happening, her thoughts racing, trying to make sense of it all. "Then what do we do? How do we stop it?" The figure shook its head. "You can't stop it now. What's coming will take more than force. It will take unity. It will take understanding." For a brief moment, everything seemed still again, as though the earth itself was holding its breath. The dark clouds overhead began to shift, revealing something far more terrifying, a vast, monstrous form, an entity that dwarfed everything Lena had ever seen. Its size was beyond comprehension, an immense shape that seemed to stretch the very limits of the horizon. It wasn't a single creature, but something far more complex, its tendrils reaching into space, its form shifting in ways that defied all logic. Lena's mind reeled. This wasn't just an alien invasion. This was something far older, far more powerful. The Kolraks had feared it. The mysterious figure had known it was coming. And now, Earth stood on the brink of being consumed by it. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling. She was no longer just a bystander in this story. She was part of it, whether she wanted to be or not. The power she had unlocked was far beyond her understanding, but it had also given her a choice. She could either close the door, sealing herself and Earth away from this threat, or she could face the unknown, risking everything to find a way to stop the creature, or at least delay it. "What happens now?" Lena asked, her voice barely a whisper. The figure gave a small, sad smile. "Now, we fight. But not with weapons. We fight with what we have left. Our minds, our hearts, and the unity we must find in the face of unimaginable odds." Lena nodded, a spark of determination igniting within her. She didn't know how to defeat this thing, this force, this creature that had emerged from the depths of the unknown. But she did know one thing: she wasn't alone. Not anymore. And that, in itself, gave her hope. As the creature's vast form moved closer, darkening the sky, Lena stood tall, her gaze fixed on the horizon. She could feel the weight of the world upon her shoulders, but she knew that sometimes it was the smallest flicker of light in the darkest hour that made all the difference. And in that moment, as the storm began to break, Lena made her choice. Earth would face what was coming, not with fear, but with the strength of humanity united. The fight was far from over, but they were ready. The sky trembled one last time as the earth began to pulse with an energy all its own. The future was uncertain, but Lena knew that the battle had only just begun. And that was enough.